Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So the hype for these new MacBook Pros have not died down yet, at least for me. And now that I've had this computer for a little over a week now, I've really been able to put this thing through its paces and really test it out and see if there's any limitations for how I personally use it. Now, actually earlier this week, I dropped a video showing you guys a real look, like a full day in the life of how I personally use this computer as being a creative. I used it for photo editing, video editing, content consumption, honestly, you name it. I tried to give a very raw look of how a creator would use this type of a computer. Now, the feedback on that video has been amazing. Thank you guys. Be sure to check it out if you haven't yet. I'll have it linked up here. But I did get a ton of questions just about this MacBook Pro in general, how things have been working out for me. Have I run into limitations? Does the 14-inch throttle? Do the fans turn on? So today I figured I'd just answer a ton of questions and just share some of my thoughts on this MacBook Pro. Now I've been using it for the last week and I've really kind of been able to test this thing out. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to drop it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any future uploads. So let's talk about the first thing you notice when you see these MacBook Pros, and it is the design. I come from the basketball world where, you know, look good, feel good, play good. So I carry that over to my tech as well. And I think these new MacBooks look absolutely amazing. I have the 14-inch here and it is a big increase from the 13-inch M1 in my opinion. I love how the edges aren't tapered anymore. It feels like a powerful machine when you hold it. Obviously the screen size has increased to give us that 14 inches. We have the ports back, which trust me, we're gonna talk about here in a second. And then obviously this nice touch on the bottom that MacBook Pro inscribed looks just so sick. And we got the feedback, which is kind of a cool thing. It feels almost like a vintage looking machine with just like updated everything inside of it. So huge fan of the design overall. Now let's talk about the ports for a second, because to me, I honestly didn't really mind the dongle life way too much. Yes, sometimes it was annoying, but you know, I thought USB-C was the future and you know, that's just how it was going to be. So I didn't think I minded it too much, but now that I've had a computer with all these ports back again, man, was I wrong. It is so nice to have these ports and just different options right here on your MacBook, especially coming from the 13-inch M1 where you literally only had the option to have 2 USB-C ports. You didn't even have the option to get 4. Having 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, the MagSafe back, which is super nice. You don't rip your cord out of your computer anymore if you trip over it. Having that HDMI port back, and then my absolute favorite is having that SD card slot back. It just saves you so much time, and especially if you're on the go, it's just nice to be able to plug certain things in without having to get a dongle out or making sure you have this certain cord or whatever it is. This is a pro machine that is meant for pro users doing, you know, photo, video work, design work, whatever it is, and just be able to have these options and not always having to have a specific dongle. It's just going to save you so much time, and it's just a huge win for everybody. I think everyone is happy to have these ports back. So let's talk about the size, because obviously I went with the 14-inch and that is the perfect size for me in my opinion. I'm someone who is on the go quite a bit, and then a lot of times if I'm here, you know, in my home office working on YouTube content or whatever it is, a lot of times I'm hooked up to my ultra-wide monitor over here, like probably 90% of the time while I'm home. So that gives me my extra real estate. And then the 14-inch just makes it a little bit more mobile while you're on the go. It fits in your backpack easier and just doesn't weigh as much. And honestly, even if you're just on like a coffee table or you're at the airport or on an airplane, it takes up less room, which is nice. Now, I am so stoked that Apple made the performance pretty much the same out of the 14-inch and the 16-inch. Sometimes Apple kind of holds out for you have to get the largest or the biggest, whatever it is, to get the most power. That's how it's been for 16 inches before. That's how it's been, you know, in the iPhone world before. So I love that you can get the same specs out of the 14 and the 16-inch. Now there's talk about throttling on the 14-inch versus the 16-inch, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. So to go along with the 14-inch screen size, let's talk about this screen because it's absolutely insane. It's hands down the best display I have ever looked at, and it's probably, you know, one of the best displays literally on the market. But, you know, in short, it's super bright. The 120 hertz looks awesome, and I love the fact that Apple makes it smart so it knows what you're doing and what you're watching, and it does a really good job of matching the frame rate to whatever it needs to be doing. I mean, there's really not too much else to say about it, but the screen, the 14 inches, does feel much bigger than the 13-inch. It feels super vibrant. Whenever you're doing photo or video editing, this looks amazing. And I would definitely buy this display if they made it like a standalone option, like the size of the iMacs or things like that. And don't even say go get the XDR display, because that thing doesn't even have 120 Hertz. So this display is in a league of its own. And yeah, I would love if Apple would produce this display in like a 27 or 32 inch version. Now let's talk about the performance here for a second, because the power of this MacBook Pro is absolutely insane. Now I use it for a lot of different creative tasks, and I think that's honestly who this type of computer is really meant for. I use it for 4K video editing, high megapixel photo editing, some design work, a little bit of motion work, obviously content consumption. Honestly, you name it, most things in the creative world is what I'm using this MacBook Pro for. Now I want to talk about video editing here specifically for a minute, because I think that's one of the most taxing things that you can do on your computer, especially a laptop. And I do want to mention that I edit in Premiere Pro. A lot of people that are doing reviews or are talking about these computers edit in Final Cut Pro, which this is no hate on them at all. Final Cut is an awesome program, but Final Cut is extremely optimized for these Apple computers. So that's amazing for people that use Final Cut, but I think a lot of the industry still uses Premiere Pro, especially in the corporate world, or if you're working with multiple people, teams, etc. Now on top of me editing in Premiere Pro, I am filming on some of the latest and greatest cameras out there. Currently I'm filming on the Sony FX3, and also my second camera body I've been shooting with is the Sony a7S III. Now the thing about having the latest and greatest camera, that's awesome, but usually it means really high resolution and sometimes really hard compressions or different codecs. So the one I've been filming in on these cameras is called A265, which basically in short, it's a really high quality file, but it's super compressed, so it's really hard for computers to handle and kind of be able to unpack that file. Now the M1 chip in the 13-inch MacBook Pro was the first of its kind to really be able to process that type of codec really well. So obviously the new M1 Pro and the M1 Max chip are just on a whole different level. So in my opinion, I'm doing some of the most tasking video work that you can do. I'm using Premiere Pro, which isn't as optimized as Final Cut. I'm using codecs that are really challenging. I'm talking multiple angles, multiple layers in my projects. I have LUTs on top of that, motion graphics, different effects, and doing things on this computer that my old MacBook Pro would literally halt to, or I'd have to pre-render my whole project to be able to watch it back. This new MacBook Pro is able to just breeze through it without a problem at all. I can play back full resolution without having to pre-render any sort of motion graphics, anything that I drop in, any different effect. I can scrub through my whole sequence and seriously no problems at all. And that's all while still having Lightroom open, maybe Photoshop open as well, watching YouTube videos at the same time, you know, on my ultra wide. So being able to just work on this computer and not worry about each little effect or thing I add in is really going to affect my workflow has been amazing. So working in the project has been amazing, but then also the export times have just been absolutely insane as well. I'm talking about videos that were on my M1 13-inch MacBook Pro. They would take me, you know, roughly like 30 minutes to export. This machine right here has been able to export those under 6 minutes. So between export times and actual working times, it's a giant difference for me and honestly a game changer. So I don't really know how else I could show the power of this thing. Maybe if you start talking about like gaming or you're doing like, you know, 3D rendering and stuff like that, you might get into a different territory. But I really think this machine is for content creators, and I don't really think anyone could push it to its limits any more than I currently am. And I would give it an A+ so far. Now, a couple more things I want to note about it is the keyboard is awesome. I'm so glad they got rid of the touch bar. Let me know down in the comments below, are you team touch bar or team no touch bar? Because I know some people love it. I feel like that group of people is much smaller, but a lot of us out there are just happy to have the normal keys back. But I also love that we still have the Touch ID for the fingerprint. It just unlocks your computer easily. If you're doing payments online, you can just pay using that. So that's really nice that they left that in there. And then the speakers on this machine, I'm blown away by. I'm someone that I don't always play music out loud, especially on my computer, but this MacBook actually makes me want to do that. I don't know how they have such good sound coming out of a machine that is this small, but they absolutely killed it. You guys just have to experience it in person to really know what I'm talking about, but trust me, they're good. So yeah, guys, that's really it for my overall thoughts on this MacBook Pro since I've been using it for a little bit over a week. And I mean, I've really been using this thing like I should probably get more sleep. I've been using this thing a lot, but no, I'm serious. I'm absolutely blown away by this device. It's a machine that us creators have really been asking for, and I really think Apple delivered. Now, when we're talking, should you get the M1 Pro chip or the M1 Max chip? That's a really hard question to answer, and I think it's gonna be different for everybody out there. You know, these new M1 MacBook Pros are really meant for a large range of different types of people with different skill sets and budgets. A freshman student at an art school will be getting this computer, and also people that are making, 6 figures plus running an entire business or even like a whole design creative agency are also going to be buying these. So your budget's always going to be a variable. What the performance you actually need out of this machine is also going to be a variable. So when you're talking about the actual difference between the Pro chip and the Max chip, a lot of it comes down to time. You're talking about maybe having to pre-render some things every once in a while. You're talking about maybe a little bit of a longer export time on projects. Or maybe if you're doing, photo editing 1,000 plus photos, maybe every once in a while you're gonna have to wait a third of a second for an image to load versus, half a second on the Max chip. So again, if you're deciding between the Pro chip and the Max chip, it really comes down to time and what the performance you need out of your computer to be. I think you can totally get away with the Pro chip. You're never gonna run into things that you aren't gonna be able to do. I think you're just gonna run into some things that maybe take you a little bit longer. And then with the Max chip, I think that is the top of the top for creators, agencies, companies. And honestly, some people have no problem spending money to just get the maxed out version to make sure they just have the most headroom, at least as much as possible. So it's not an exact answer, but it's not an easy decision. A lot of it's gonna come down to your budget and what your time restraints are. And I hope that makes sense. All right guys, so that's gonna be it for me in today's video. This actually went a lot longer than I expected, so I might have to trim this video down a bit. But I have a lot of thoughts on this computer. It's an absolute game changer for me. I've been enjoying using it so far, and I know I'm not the only person out there that is excited about this. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, will you please drop this video a thumbs up. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. The support on the channel has just been insane lately. I know a lot of new people are coming in. So if you subscribe, it means a lot to me, and be sure to drop a comment down below and let me know what content you guys want to see next. I definitely have a lot planned for these new MacBook Pros and definitely using them quite a bit. But guys, that's gonna be it. I'll catch you in the next video very, very soon. Peace, guys.